come to this happy place, welcome. Here age relives fond memories of the past. And here youth may savor the challenge and promise of the future.
The Silly Symphony Collection is a unique box set from Walt Disney Records and Fairfax Classics that features restored soundtracks of all 75 Silly Symphony shorts made from 1929 to 1939. This is 8 hours of music that is landing on 16 vinyl LPs plus a free digital download. Pre-orders are going to be set at D23 on August 14th and will continue at SillySymphonyCollection.com, and the product will ship in time for Christmas. This is a project that I am exceedingly excited about. I've known of its existence for months, at least that it was going to happen. And the person whom I trust the most, who gave me this little tidbit of information nearly a year ago under the veil of secrecy, is Jesse Obstbaum, who fans will know is the producer of The Mouse Pod. Jesse, this project, which puts into a box set audio that fans of the Silly Symphonies have heard for years, but not quite like this. What was the genesis for this project?
Well, it actually goes back to the relationship that Fairfax Classics has with Disney. Basically, Fairfax Recordings is a record label based in Los Angeles, and they operate out of the old Sound City recording studios that might be familiar to some people. They are great at signing new bands. They are great at producing new records, and the people at Walt Disney Records recognize that. So they partnered with Fairfax Recordings to release a bunch of their artists. Once that what word am I looking for? Relationship fell into place. A couple of the folks over at Fairfax said, "Hey, if Disney is going to be putting out some of our new music, maybe we can take an independent angle and put out some of Disney's classic music." So we sat down. They brought me in to consult because I'm a music person and a Disney nerd. And they said, well, what are some of the ideas that we could come up with? And we really did a crazy blue sky brainstorm. And we met with Randy Thornton, who is basically the historian of Disney music at Disney, as well as being a very talented producer and someone who understands Disney music better than probably anyone alive.
Now, fans will know Randy Thornton was the producer on the box set of the musical history of Disneyland, right?
Yes, and he's also currently overseeing the Legacy Collection, which is an amazing set of CDs that really take the most loving, detailed look at the music from classic Disney soundtracks.
And being re-released on CD and in the digital domain as well?
Yes. And anyway, so we met with Randy, and we basically came up with all these crazy pitches, and we figured that the most ambitious and the biggest bang that we could get to start would be to go after the first music that one can associate with Disney, and that was the Silly Symphony Collection. Silly Symphonies started in 1929, so basically less than a year after Steamboat Willie, which was the first synchronized sound cartoon ever. Carl Stalling, who is the music director over at Disney, went to Walt and he said, I would love to do a series of cartoons that are music driven as opposed to character driven with the Mickey cartoons. Walt thought it was a great idea. Carl and Ub Iwerks, who is also the original Mickey Mouse animator, got together and started on the Skeleton Dance, which would be the first of 75 Silly Symphonies. We figured that if Disney's music heritage started there, then we should start there as well.
The music that is in the Silly Symphonies is integral to propelling the stories and the narrative forward in the cartoons themselves. What is it that appeals when you take the visual aspect away? What is in the music itself that allows it to make for a standalone listening experience?
Well, for me, and I can only speak for myself as a fan of the music, I think what's interesting is that the way that these Silly Symphonies were conceived was that they were conceived as 6 or 7 minute little pocket symphonies of music. The animation and the music came at the same time. Very, very often there was you have a storyboard or a story that's trying to be that the animator wants to tell, and then the composer will write music to match the action. With the Silly Symphonies, they were more equal, on more equal ground. So when you listen to the Silly Symphony music without the visuals, it just gives an extra layer of appreciation, because you're really hearing the music that was written by these incredible songwriters of the time, many of whom are Disney legends.
Frank Churchill, Carl Stalling, Lee Harleen, these are the three composers that come up most often in the Silly Symphonies. How do you differentiate the styles among the three?
Well, there are actually a few others. There's Burt Lewis as well. But yes, absolutely. There's those three are the ones that seem to be most talked about, especially because of things like Water Babies or The Three Little Pigs or even The Skeleton Dance. So for me, Carl Stalling is... I was aware of Carl Stalling as a music composer from the Warner Brothers cartoons, because he later, after he left Disney, he went on and kind of made a name for himself doing Bugs Bunny shorts. And so as the original Silly Symphony composer, his stuff is really interesting, because he uses lots of pastiches. He'll take music from classical pieces that might have been familiar, lots of recent versions of recent contemporary songs that have been changed or that might be familiar to contemporary audiences. So his stuff is very cartoony. It's a really weird way to describe music, but it's something that might be familiar to viewers of cartoons or people who grew up watching early Disney cartoons or Warner Brothers cartoons. When you talk about somebody like Frank Churchill is a pop music composer. So he wrote Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf? That was a massive, massive hit. I think there were something like 7 different versions of Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf recorded by different artists the year that Three Little Pigs was released. It was that popular. And then somebody like Lee Harleen comes from a more classical background. And Lee Harleen, his music is kind of more... again, for lack of a better word, romantic or beautiful. He's more symphonic. So when you're watching a Silly Symphony, you can start to pick out, this sounds more like Frank Churchill, or this sounds more like Lee Harleen. 9 times out of 10, you'll be right. And occasionally you'll be wrong, and that's because they work so well together that there is a fluidity to the music. And
so someone need only listen to Musicland and Water Babies to get a feel for Lee Harleen, and for Frank Churchill, they can go back to earlier efforts like the Egyptian Melodies or Who Killed Cock Robin and get the sense of symphonic, not verses, but juxtaposed to the more popular sound or jazz sound. And didn't Disney, when they were using the Silly Symphonies as a platform, didn't they explore different styles of music on purpose?
Well, absolutely. I mean, the Silly Symphonies really were, they weren't made to lose money. The Silly Symphonies were made because people loved them, and they were made as an opportunity for the animators and the composers to explore new ideas. So the music that's in the Silly Symphonies, and the music that's referenced in the Silly Symphonies, is music that would be familiar with popular audiences of the day.
When I see a title card for a Silly Symphony cartoon come up on the screen, towards the bottom it says RCA High Fidelity. High fidelity in the 1930s versus high fidelity today are two completely different things. What's the biggest difference between the two from what we hear now versus what was produced 70, 80 years ago?
Well, I mean, it really comes down to the way it was recorded. Back then, what high fidelity was still mono. Mono really was the way that music was heard for decades until the late 60s. Everything was typically monophonic. I guess a good example of somebody trying to break out of monophonic was Disney later with Fantasia with their Fantasound, which was the first surround sound that nobody understood how great it was for decades. But so the high fidelity back then was just really, really good microphones recording an orchestra that was basically recorded 100% live while they were watching a cut of the cartoon.
Back in the day, wouldn't they record not only the soundtrack, but the sound effects at the same time?
Yeah, in fact, if you listen to a lot of the Silly Symphonies, and when you hear them on the collection, they're so much clearer than you've ever heard them before. You'll notice that most of the sound effects aren't really weird Foley sound effects, but they are made with instruments or human voices, and they're recorded right then and there.
This is an age of digital distribution. Amazon Music, iTunes. Why distribute this box set on vinyl?
Well, part of what we wanted to do when we started putting together the plans for the Silly Symphony Collection was to respect the historical nature of the music. And one of the things that was important to us as music fans and record collectors was to look back and realize that there really was no Disney record company back in the 1930s when the Silly Symphonies were being made. So what we decided to do was sit down and say, if Walt Disney and Tutti Camerata in the late 50s were going to do a Silly Symphony Collection, how would they do it? And so for us, the packaging was very important. And really, while we love CDs and we are fans of iTunes, like all music fans, we figured that the coolest way to do this project was to do it like a great Disneyland record. So we actually even got permission from Disney to use the Disneyland Records logo on the labels, on all the packaging. And the box is put together as if it were a late 1950s Disneyland Records release.
Tutti Camerata was a prolific composer and arranger for Walt Disney Records in the late 50s. And in fact, he produced all of the Annette records as well. The records that he put out that were derived from the films, I'm thinking like Sleeping Beauty, for example, or Fantasia, these things were lavishly produced, and they were sold not as kiddie records, but in the main bins for adults. And that's the kind of sensibility you're trying to echo here?
Yes, absolutely.
The packaging itself has got to be really top-notch.
It is, and one of the things that we did when we decided to put this package together, some of the folks over here at Walt Disney Records put us in contact immediately with a guy named Dave Bossert. And Dave Bossert, you can Google him. Has a very impressive CV, but he is currently the head of special projects over at Walt Disney Animation. He was very excited about the project, and he gave us access to these amazing still images and screen grabs from the Silly Symphonies that have been restored and cleaned up, and to use them for the packaging. So all of the images that you see on the Silly Symphony Collection packaging come from the actual Silly Symphonies themselves.
When Disney actually packaged the Silly Symphonies, they had the Silly Symphonies from Walt Disney Treasures and then more Silly Symphonies that was released a couple of years later. They did a phenomenal job at restoring many of the visuals, and they are as vibrant as they were, one can imagine, if you walked into a theater sometime in the 1930s. Why did the audio need to be restored for this collection?
My understanding is that every time, historically, Disney would transfer the Silly Symphonies from one format to another, and the audio originally might have been on magnetic, and then or optical, and then moved to magnetic. they would save every iteration of the audio. So when we started to work on this project, and Randy asked the animation department to send over the music or the soundtracks from the Silly Symphonies, he got as many as 9 or 10 of each one, from different stages, from different transfers through the years. And so the first part of his job was to actually go through every single version of every single Silly Symphony and find which one had the best sound for a listening experience. So it might not be the version that you would have heard on the DVD restoration, because the DVD restoration, the music was made for the compressed DVD audio at the time, which is almost 10 years ago.
The one thing that I lament about going to CDs and jewel boxes was missing liner notes. Tell me about, because you use in the press release 8 tip-on gatefold jackets. Okay, first of all, for someone who is not our age, shall we say, what is a gatefold jacket? Gatefold
literally means a jacket, a record jacket that opens up. So when you imagine a record that might come in a standard jacket, there's just a back cover and a front cover. Mm-hmm. But when you talk about a gatefold, you've got this 12 by 12 inch square that is the record, and then you open it up like a book, and you have an inside left and an inside right. So rather than having 2 surfaces for pictures and information, you've got 4. And there's a pocket on each side, so there are 2 records in each jacket. So it's a 16 record set, and the 16 records are inside 8 jackets.
And that's what the 8 tip-on is?
No, that's what 8 is. So it's 8. So it's 8, comma. Tip-on is, now this is something that you're going to have to dig into your old record collection and see. But if you look at recent record albums, the way they're printed is it's a single image that is folded and glued. That's how most record labels are now, record jackets are now. But if you look at old records, and maybe Gary, you can help me out with this if you have any examples that you might find from your own collection. But if you look at old records, there were actually 2 separate labels. So you'd have a pre-assembled cardboard jacket that was blank, and then they would make a back cover, and the back cover was a piece of paper that was glued on and would wrap around the top, the bottom, and the spine, and then they would have a square front cover, and that would be glued onto that. So it was really done in this beautiful way that you would have a perfectly square image for the front cover that was glued on, and that's what a tip-on jacket is. So you really have to pull out some of your old records to see, but it's an old school way of putting records together, and it just looks classier, it looks better, and they last longer.
When you have the real estate, like you were talking about, to put in liner notes, what are you doing for this project that can actually educate as well as entertain with the audio itself?
Well, I'll tell you a funny story. When we first decided that the Silly Symphony Collection was going to be something that we were going to do, I pulled out my copy of the Silly Symphony book. It's a companion book that came out. It's a small Italian press. It was released about in 2006, and it was written by a pair of Disney historians, J.B. Kaufman and Russell Merritt. So I was using the book, and I had it propped up on my table with a water glass, keeping it open, taking notes to list the release dates, the timing, so that we could try to put the package together. It occurred to me that there was a wealth of information in this book, and I wanted to buy a copy for my partner in this, Neil. So I went on Amazon to pick up another copy of the book, and the cheapest copy at the time was going for about $2,000.
Oh my.
Shock. Apparently it went out of print very quickly, and it is in demand. So I sent out an email to J.B. Kaufman, one of the authors, and said, JB, I'm working on a Silly Symphony project. It's going to be done in conjunction with Walt Disney Records, and we really would love an extra copy of your book if you have one sitting around. And they're very dear, and I know that. But if you have one, it would be really helpful to me. And JB's response was, well, I don't have any extra copies of the book, but I would love to be involved in this project, which was music to my ears. So within very short order, JB Kaufman and Russell Merritt wrote from scratch a series of liner notes that actually talk about each individual short with a special emphasis on the music that's involved in each short. And that's what you're going to get in each gatefold jacket. So when you open it up, you'll find liner notes from J.B. Kaufman and Russell Merritt that actually reference all of the shorts in that volume.
With all that's going into this project, this has to be a limited release, correct?
Yes.
How many units are going out the door?
Well, the initial conversation was that we are limiting this to a maximum of 5,000 units. We want to make sure that everybody at D23 who wants to buy it has an opportunity. But we are going to hold back, if it's selling too fast, at least 1,000 copies to sell online for people who can't attend the D23 Expo, starting the day after the Expo, so on August 17th. But basically what's going to happen is we'll take the number of pre-sales that happen at D23, the number of pre-sales that happen within a very short amount of time, maybe a week online, and determine how many we're going to press. But I'm pretty sure that the maximum is going to be 5,000, and it's going to be limited to the people that order it within the first week or so.
I know there are people listening that want to know the price. Let's just get it out in the open.
It's $399.98, which is, for all intents and purposes, $400.
This is really being produced as a labor of love and for the fans, is it not? Which you are.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, one of the things when we started coming up with our blue sky ideas for projects that we would do with Disney, the idea was always, we only want to make records that we would buy ourselves. This is something that I would be first in line to buy. I would camp out. And I have to also say that the sound on this set is pretty amazing. What they've been able to do with they haven't cleaned it up to the point where it sounds like it was recorded yesterday, but they have been working very hard to make sure that the sound of the music sounds like it might have been had you gone to see it in the theater in the 1930s.
What is the difference subjectively between that sound and something that's been restored for the listening experience? I'm
poorly going to paraphrase what Randy said to me, but basically what he did was, when he listened to all the different various versions of the Silly Symphony recordings, he wanted the one that had the biggest room sound. He wanted something that didn't sound flat. He wanted to start with his source material being something that had a depth, breadth, and then start working from there. So the listening experience is going to be, especially with headphones, a lot more roomy than the sound you might have heard on the Disney Treasure Tins.
In addition to the vinyl that's being released, which I think is fantastic, there's an easy argument that can be made that vinyl, especially with a decent turntable and headphones, conveys a sense of warmth. And of course, all of these original recordings were in the analog domain, so it makes sense. But there's also a digital download for the convenience and the portability. Tell me about that.
Well, I mean, you nailed it, Gary. It's really for convenience. The truth is that we understand that there are going to be Disney fans who will appreciate the import of this box and are willing to spend the $399.98 for the box. It might not have a way to listen to it in the best way, in the way that we'd like them to. There are lots of really inexpensive turntables out there, and it just wouldn't do justice to the work that the folks, Randy and his team, have done. So we decided that the best way that we can serve that audience is to include the option to download the record digitally. So in each box, there'll be a code for every volume. so you don't have to download the whole thing at once in one massive file. You can pick and choose between any of the 8 volumes and download those and put them on your computer or put them on your iPhone or whatever your listening device is. Listen to them in the car, burn a CD. And we figured that since it's only being released on vinyl right now, that having the ability to listen to it in other ways is important, especially considering that people are making an investment in the box.
It's not only an investment in the packaging, which is clearly going to be gorgeous, and where can people go to actually see this collection and how it's going to look, what they're going to get in the mail?
Well, we have a site set up. It's a microsite, and it's part of the Disney Music Emporium. First of all, I recommend everyone go to the Disney Music Emporium. Generally, it's a bookmarkable site for music fans. Right now, it serves most of the Legacy collection, and we have our own unique URL. It's just SillySymphonyCollection.com, and that will bring you to the unique page at Disney Music Emporium. That's where you'll see our documentary that we've made. That's where you'll see images of the box set. And we will also be, in the next several days, probably by the time you hear this, they might all be there, the covers for each individual volume. That's also where you'll be able to pre-order it starting August 17th.
Tell me about your presence at D23. For those that are going, this is going to be good information.
Okay. This is interesting. The box set is going to be available for pre-order at the Disney Dream Store. Disney Dream Store is one of the 3 stores that people camp out for to line up and shop. It's a special store that's unique to D23. Interestingly enough, for the first time ever at D23, Walt Disney Records is going to have its own booth. And there'll be lots of different music from the Disney Music Emporium featured there, including the Silly Symphony Collection. So if you aren't able to camp out, or you don't want to wait in line for the Disney Dream Store, and I'm not recommending you don't, I think you should. But if for some reason you don't make it in there, you can always go to the Disney Music booth at D23. Additionally, and this is kind of a really neat piece of happenstance, there is going to be a Silly Symphony concert happening at D23. It's going to be happening twice on Sunday, where a 32-piece orchestra will be performing music from several of the Silly Symphonies, with the images or the shorts themselves being projected on a screen behind them. Each Silly Symphony is going to be introduced by Leonard Maltin. So that's going to be a really special event. In between those 2 concerts, you'll have an opportunity, if you did pre-order the box set, to have a very special, very limited edition, also tip-on cover, 10-inch single with 3 Little Pigs on one side, Skeleton Dance on the other, and you can have that autographed by J.B. Kaufman, Russell Merritt, and of course Randy Thornton.
It sounds like there's going to be a really good presence at D23. The pre-ordering process is going to be there, and then people will be able to go where after D23 to pre-order the set?
Right to SillySymphonyCollection.com.
Okay, so it's all on the same microsite then.
Mm-hmm. And you'll also be able to go, if you did bookmark Disney Music Emporium, it'll be there as well.
Jesse, thank you for taking the time to talk about this. I am completely shameless when it comes to promoting something that is so near and dear to so many Disney fans, and I'm really hoping that by getting the word out in social media and via podcasts that we can not only educate, but we can get people out there to buy this set and really enjoy the Silly Symphonies in the best possible way, and that is by strapping on a pair of really good headphones and listening to it on vinyl. I'm so excited to be able to do that myself, I can't tell you.
Well, thank you so much for the love that you're giving to this project, Gary. And I'm really glad that people who listen to Mouse Lounge will be able to get a little idea of what we're doing with this project.